today to talk about gut health is something that I get a lot of questions about, and that is why we are coming here to discuss what is gut health and why is it so important to make sure that when you are digging deeper into what is going on in your gut and we're learning and you're optimizing your gut microbiome, then a very important factor is to get the right type of test. We've learned that with food sensitivity testing, and we're learning with all kinds of testing that it's important to get the test that's going to give you the most clinical application, the usefulness of the test. And as we know, many stool tests used cultures, and we're moving away from that using DNA, PCR, gut testing, which is so important because that is when you're looking for something, you can find it and you can quantify it. You can see how overgrown it is by using DNA PCR, gut microbiome testing. So, what is gut health? Let's go over it so we could all understand how important it is to fix and optimize the gut. So, we see that the gut has about 70% of our immune system. It's called the GALT, GALT, gut associated lymphoid tissue. That is our immune system in our gut, 70% of it. So, therefore, it can become overactivated based on when we have an overgrowth of certain different types of either viruses, bacteria, yeast, parasites, H. pylori, low stomach acid, insufficient digestive enzymes. This all can create a scenario which can lead to a leaky gut or intestinal permeability, where larger particles get into our bloodstream when they're not supposed to be there, and then our immune system is activated. And this is what we want to optimize and prevent, is this overactivation of our immune system based on a leaky gut or intestinal hyperpermeability. And the best way to measure that is using DNA PCR stool analysis, which will let us know what are the bacteria that are there and in how much quantity. So, for example, we know that there are keystone species. Why are they called keystone species? Because they produce metabolites, they make messages, and they communicate with one another. And these messages can heal our gut. They're beneficial for even our brain. There's a gut brain connection through the vagus nerve. It's called the enteric nervous system, where we have a gut brain connection where we have neurotransmitters in our gut, such as serotonin, tryptophan, and dopamine and GABA from certain bacteria that also produce and help to create these neurotransmitters through what they're breaking down products of these bacteria. So we want to have these keystone species. And in order to find these keystone species, the most accurate way is DNA PCR stool analysis. So we're looking for keystone species such as Akkermansia or fecal bacterium. These produce butyrate, and butyrate is a healing nutrient for our gut. That's why we're looking for these keystone bacteria. We also are looking for certain types of bacteria that we know are implicated because their byproducts have more toxins to it, like Clostridia and autism. We see a connection with that by the byproduct that these bacteria make. So we want to measure how much this bacteria is overgrown, and we want to find it. The best way to find it is not a culture, is a DNA stool analysis. That's the best way to find what you're looking for. And then what we want to make sure there's not an overgrowth of these inflammatory and autoimmune stimulating types of bacteria like Klebsiella, Prevotella, Pseudomonas, Citrobacter. These, when overgrown, because they're normally in our gut in very small amounts, but they can become overgrown. There's lack of competition because we might not have the keystone species. There might be an other pathogen like H. pylori or a parasite that's creating this imbalance, and certain bacteria overgrow and they squeeze out the other ones. And so this is what's called dysbiosis, and that's an imbalanced microbiome. The problem is when the overgrowth are inflammatory types of bacteria, immune activating types of bacteria, or they are type of parasites that take a lot of our nutrients and use our nutrients. And so this is also very key for vitamin nutrient absorption. And so we know gut health is essential for the absorption of our nutrients, of vitamins, and that's another part. And then there's another part of liver gallbladder health that's connected with the gut. So you want to have a good test that measures that liver gallbladder gut connection, and that's an enzyme called beta glucuronidase. Not every stool test measures that. But the problem is some stool tests measure that, but they do cultures. They don't do DNA PCR. And if they do DNA PCR, it's only on a few organisms like parasites. You want to be able to make sure you're finding H. pylori, making sure you're finding candida, and not just using cultures for those, because then you're going back to that old technology. And you might find them in the culture, but you don't know the quantity. And that leads us to then not know whether to take action, because we want to know if these are overgrown, not just if they're there, because we know that the microbiome has this diversity of having candida and H. pylori in low, non-detectable amounts. So they're there, and doing a culture might find them, but it doesn't tell you if they're overgrown. That is the key. And that is why we make sure in our South Florida Integrative Health Center that we're using the most advanced testing, the testing that gives you the best clinical applications and clinical protocols and programs, so that we can heal the gut. We use botanicals, we use vitamins and nutrients, and if we need to, when there's a major overgrowth of certain types of bacteria or yeast or fungus or parasites, then we might have to go to stronger prescription strength. But we have those choices because we're integrative medicine. We can use the best of both worlds. So we see when there's a candida overgrowth, we can use the best of both worlds. Should we use a prescription? Has the person tried to eliminate this before and been unsuccessful? Should we go for natural protocols where the bacteria or yeast are not resistant to these antibiotics that have been used before? So it's a very much an individualized process. We don't want to give enzymes when a person has irritation to the gut because they've had an H. pylori. We don't want to give hydrochloric acid or acidity when a person has been dealing with an H. pylori. And that quite often happens where, with good intention, enzymes are given, hydrochloric acid is given, and they haven't dealt with the infection, the H. pylori, which has irritated the stomach lining and therefore that hasn't been addressed. We've got to heal the gut and then provide the enzymes and acidity in that case. It's very individualized, and that's what's so important about gut health, is to do the right gut test that's going to give you practical clinical takeaways that you can start doing now to build up your gut and improve your gut health. So what's important is to make sure that we are using the best testing to get to gut health. And that best testing is going to really provide us information about keystone species. Those are those beneficial bacteria that produce these metabolites that help to nourish our gut, heal our gut, and even protect our brain. We want to make sure there's not an overgrowth of these opportunistic bacteria that are normally there in our gut, but when they become overgrown, they are inflammatory and they can stimulate our immune system. We want to make sure through highly advanced DNA PCR testing if there's H. pylori and what type of H. pylori. Is it the more virulent, dangerous kind? That way we can take better action steps. We want to make sure there's not an overgrowth of candida, and if it's the more virulent candida albicans, we want to make sure that there's not any parasites using DNA PCR technology. And we want to provide the best protocols that we found to be effective over the last 25 years since we've been helping people in functional medicine and regular medicine at South Florida Integrative Health Center. For 25 years, we have gut protocols that now work. We're not using protocols from 20 years ago or 25 years ago. We've developed them because the testing has advanced, where we now know the overgrowth, more specifically using DNA PCR testing. And we also know the keystone species we need to support. We also know the intestinal health part, enzymes, digestion of fats, whether we're having a good connection with our liver, gallbladder, and gut, and that's known as beta glucuronidase, where they're going to recycle our hormones and toxins. If we don't get that right, it's supposed to be eliminated through the gut from the liver, gallbladder, not recycled, and we can measure that. It's very, very important. So remember, gut health is attainable, and it needs to be done in the right way and with the best gut testing. And here at South Florida Integrated Health Center, we have protocols and programs that when we take these results and based on the individual person, we can get effective quality outcomes. And that is what is our goal here, is better outcomes for our patients. So hope everyone enjoyed this and learned something from this. If you did, please comment below. And any questions, go ahead and comment below or direct message. You see our website in the corner. You can make a discovery call and visit our website. Everyone have a healthy, happy day.